Hello and welcome to a brand new episode of IIT India's Walk the Tech Talk series Season 2 in association with India Automated. In case you have missed out on any of our previous episodes or episodes of Season 1 of Walk the Tech Talk series, then please do check them out on IIT India's YouTube channel. Before we get into today's session, I would like to give you a sneak peek into the world of IIT. The Institution of Engineering and Technology is one of the oldest and largest professional society for engineers. Soon to turn 150, our mission is to engineer a better world. Our areas of focus include future technologies, future of mobility and transport, and future of work. In case you want to become a member of the IIT, you can just send us an email at indiamembership@theiit.in. All right, without further delay, I would like to call on stage your host for this series, Mr. Pranjal Sharma, the author of India Automated, for him to invite our speaker guest today and also the topic of discussion. Hi, Pranjal.
Hello, Jani. Good to be back.
Good to be back. And over to you now. I'm going to be away so that you can introduce our speaker guest and also the topic of discussion. Over to you.
Sure, thanks. So welcome everybody to this edition of Walk the Tech Talk with IIT. My guest today is Jaijit Bhattacharya, CEO of Zerone Microsystems. Jaijit, welcome to our show.
Thank you, Pranjal. Good to be in your show.
So Jaijit, you have been various things, and I think you'll continue to wear several hats. You've been an advisor, consultant, you are a professor, and you're now a startup as well. Tell us a little bit about your work, because we're going to be talking about the future of digital payments, and you've done a lot of work on that. So why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Right, Pranjal. In fact, when I was in KPMG, we actually did an audit of how the Jan Dhan Yojana of the government was actually panning out. And at that point in time, they had acquired about 200 million bank accounts in a period of 2 months. And based on the audit that KPMG did, they were actually featured in the Guinness Book of World Records for having that many number of accounts open in that short period of time. So the thought that was there was, why can't we put a small layer on top of it and enable all of these people who have just got a new bank account and have just got a new debit card in hand to also be able to make payments? And that's the thought that we started building upon and we said, look, if you need to get people to make payments on cards, then you need to provide everybody with a payment terminal. All the merchants need to have a payment terminal. Now imagine if a merchant in Begusarai goes for a payment terminal and the payment terminal stops working. Nobody will service that person for at least a week, 2 weeks. And therefore, that's not a viable solution. And also the cost of providing that payment terminal becomes very, very complex. So at one point, at one hand, you have a solution where people can actually make a digital payment without using a smartphone, because more than 50% of the population in this country do not have a smartphone. So they cannot take out their smartphone, scan a QR code and make a payment, but they have a debit card in their pocket. So could they possibly make a digital payment? And therefore, if you could only enable the merchants to start having a very ultra low cost payment acceptance terminal, then perhaps you could start moving towards a scenario where an even larger number of people can start making payments digitally. And that's basically the journey that we started taking. And that's culminated into the creation of Zerone Microsystems and the product being called Zoopos, which actually allows a piece of software to be downloaded on your smartphone. You as a merchant, all you have to do is buy a smartphone, download our application, and it's got all the technologies built in to allow you to start accepting payments from debit cards, from non-NFC debit cards, NFC-enabled debit cards, QR code from another phone, from Apple phone, Apple Pay, Samsung Pay, you name it, and that technology sitting on your phone can start accepting payments from every single entity out there. And again, if I go back to that example of the merchant sitting in Begusarai, if the merchant is facing any problems with this kind of a solution, then all that they have to do is either fix their phone or reinstall the application. So the whole issue...
Jaijit, how is it different from the current apps that we have, the wallets that we have, which have become very popular in the last few years?
So Pranjal, unfortunately, we are trapped in the in the focus of what the upper middle class does, because we dominate media and so on. Now, in the upper middle class, everybody has a smartphone. And therefore, everybody can now actually make a payment through the phone pays and Google pays and so on and so forth. But statistically, the hard statistic says more than 50% of the population in this country does not have a smartphone. So if you do not have a smartphone, how do you make a payment through Google Pay or through Paytm and so on and so forth? So all of the solutions that we generally think has solved the digital payments problem in India has not really solved the problem. We have a large population in this country who still needs access to digital payment. And that's basically what we're looking at, Pranjal. How do we enable them to make a payment to any merchant, and the merchant will be able to accept that payment digitally without the customer having a smartphone?
So that's fantastic. What is the size of the market or the population that you think would need this kind of a new, innovative, and perhaps more frugal approaches? But it could also be a situation that this is really going to be diminishing with time, right? Because if there are people as they graduate and as they evolve to smartphones or better devices, or as better devices become more affordable, things would change rapidly as well.
So, Pranjal, we're actually moving towards a regime of dematerialization. And I'm not saying dematerialization from the perspective of money, but dematerialization of everything. Do you carry a camera anymore? You don't. It's part of your first smartphone. Do you carry a music player anymore? You don't. Do you carry any of the 100 things that are there in your phone? Do you carry a separate GPS system? You don't. It's all dematerialized and put into that smartphone. Why would anybody have a separate payment terminal? It is dematerialized. So what we've essentially disrupted is taken out this special purpose machine called a POS machine, taken out the special purpose network, the special purpose switches, and taken it out of the cost system. Once you take that out, the associated manpower cost also goes away. And therefore, the total cost of doing a transaction comes down dramatically. And that's basically what we have done. And hence, as we move forward and the regime changes to more and more people getting access to an NFC-enabled card, an NFC-enabled smartphone, because of our technology is a software technology, we keep upgrading it based on whatever is the latest technology. And so you don't need to actually change machines anymore.
So, Jaijit, the way I see it and the way you describe it, basically we're looking at digital payments in three broad buckets. One would be, of course, institutional and corporate kind of payments and transfers. Second is individuals, but within that there are those in urban areas with higher quality devices, higher feature devices, and those in the non-urban areas who probably haven't got those very expensive devices yet. So broadly, this is the three categories that I see. But the interesting numbers that have come out, they show that in the last quarter of 2019-20, for the first time, digital payments have exceeded the ATM cash withdrawals in the country. So which means that at a national level, with all these categories coming together, we find that digital payments have actually risen, and that could be the trend for the post-COVID era as well.
Absolutely, Pranjal. Why are we moving towards digital? I mean, is it we are doing it because it's a fashion? No, there is a very specific economic reason why economies and people are moving towards digital, and that essentially follows the path of lowering of costs. So digital is lower cost. So we first had cash, and India is actually spending 3,700 crores in printing cash and 1,700 crore in minting coins. So about 5,500 crores is being spent in just managing our cash and our coins. That's a national waste. Imagine the number of hospitals we could have built with that money. And
that's
therefore,
almost $1 billion.
It's almost $1 billion every year. And I'm not talking about the year 2016 when demonetization happened. I'm talking about a regular year. And therefore, we moved from cash to check. We said it'll reduce the cost. And then we said from check, we'll move to card, which will reduce the cost further. Then we said we'll move to a national payment system like UPI, and many of the countries are doing that. They're moving to an account-to-account real-time payment, which is what UPI really is, and that's all reducing the cost. And therefore, naturally, the economy will move towards the lowest cost of transaction, and that's what you see today. That the number of transactions.
What kind of I want to move on the technologies. What are the trends you see? What are the emerging technologies that you see happening in India, which will perhaps accelerate this process over the next 18 to 24 months?
Right. As I was mentioning a little while ago, that the trend moved from cash to check to card. And now we are moving to a really interesting situation where we are moving towards smartphones, towards thumbprint based AEPS, which is very, very popular. And thanks to the work done by common service centers, it has become really popular. To a face recognition based system, where your face recognition will become one of the associated multiple factors of approving payments, and you can actually make a complete payment just using your face, because everything that payment is about recognizing who you are, and then based on that enabling the payment to happen. We also have, as part of the technology process like scan your card and pay, tap your card and pay, which is the NFC enabled one, even scan your thumbprint and pay, not necessarily touch it, because the moment you touch your thumbprint with a device, you are now at the risk of getting infected thanks to the situation that we have in. So you can actually take a scan of your thumbprint and make the payment. And as I said, scan your face and make the payment. So those are the kind of technological developments we're moving forward. But another very interesting technological development that's happening is digital money. And by digital money, I don't mean cryptocurrency, which has got a different conversation to be had. But digital money in terms of just converting your rupees and your cash into digital to be stored in a system like your phone or in a card, which can make a payment independent of a network in the backend. Now, as we know, in a place like India, where the network is spotty and iffy, if you don't have a network, will you be able to make a payment through digital? The answer is no. But if you don't have a network, you can be able to make a payment through digital money, because the digital money will go through a personal area network or a very closed area of communication. And that's going to revolutionize how we start doing transactions in future, because even machines can start giving payment to each other. You get into a taxi, car will get actually the payment and not the driver.
So Jaijit, it seems to me that, and I think a lot of consumers, is that we need this big event to push people into, a movement like digital finance and digital payments. We had demonetization, which got a lot of people to be accepting the concept of this, and now COVID is also doing it. So do you think now we've reached a situation that we don't need these big events, and there is now going to be an absolute momentum?
So Pranjal, the quick answer is that the absolute momentum that you're mentioning was always there, except that it was growing at what was usually called the Hindu rate of growth, which is 3%, 4%, essentially meaning a very low rate of growth. Now, these events, which are regulatory in nature or natural in the form of that event, actually accelerates that path. So instead of growing at a very low rate, it suddenly grows at a much, much higher rate. Having said that, we also need to keep in mind that there are a large population who will be always technologically challenged. So the senior citizens will find it difficult. Those who are not comfortable with numbers and digits will find it very difficult. Those who are visually challenged will find it difficult, and so on and so forth. So it'll never be that the entire population gets converted, but it'll always be that a large scale of the population accelerates towards adopting digital payments and dematerialized payments. And that is the acceleration. That is the population where there'll be a significant acceleration during events such as COVID that we are facing right now.
Jaijit, one final question, and this is a subject which is related to something that you've been a champion of, which is of technological sovereignty. And it appears to me that we are at a point where, while digital payments enhance and accelerate across all categories of consumers, whether in rural or urban areas, the question of controlling the payment gateways or the technologies which are enabling this becomes an important issue for a country like India. What needs to be done to ensure that we can proceed at mass scale while protecting our interests as well?
So let me answer that question first with a real life event, which was Snowden being stopped by the US government from getting any payments through either Visa or MasterCard or PayPal, and you name it. Nobody could fund Snowden digitally because all of these payment systems are stopped. Now imagine a situation where India is in a border conflict, and while its armies are standing in the border, the back-end economy collapses because the powers which can control our financial systems tell those companies that under their respective national acts, they are not allowed to support the payment systems. So your e-commerce collapses. Many of the digital payment-based systems, in fact, if bulk of the economy moves towards digital payment, that entire economy collapses. While we are facing a strategic situation on the borders, and that is what the whole issue of national sovereignty is, and specifically national sovereignty on financial systems. It's not a jingoistic issue. It's an issue of having a moat around us, of ring fencing us, and of protecting us. As part of that initiative and as part of that issue, Government of India has moved forward with creating systems such as RuPay, NPCI is fantastic, range of Indian financial stack that they have built up, UPI, and those all form part of the backbone of providing us with technological sovereignty from financial systems perspective. Having said that, you still have the issue of somebody actually infecting these systems. And keep in mind that the financial system is the lifeblood of any country. And if that gets impacted, the entire country can be brought down to its knees. And therefore, we always need to be aware and doubly critical of what is the security that our financial systems have, be it at a bank level, be it at a cooperative bank level, be it at the real-time settlement level. At each of these systems have to be ring-fenced from a pure technological security perspective, and that's absolutely imperative. There are many steps being taken by the various financial institutions, including RBI, NPCI, NABARD, and so on. But I don't think we can ever keep the guard down. We have to be paranoid on that front.
Thank you, Jaijit. I think that's fantastic. We could discuss this more, but as a billion people plus become part of the digital finance mainstream, I think these issues of control, security, protection of data becomes absolutely critical. And of course, the fact that while new technologies are being deployed, there has to be some sense of control that Indian institutions have over these, because digital finance will be able to, completely transform our society in a way that has, I think, no parallel in the world. Thanks so much for joining us on this edition of Walk the Tech Talk.
My pleasure. Thank you. Thank you, Pranjal, and thanks to all the attendees. Thank you.